panel is here. NBC News Washington managing editor Carol Lee, Charles Benson, anchor and chief political reporter of our NBC station WTMJ in Milwaukee, former White House press secretary Jen Psaki, host of Inside with Jen Psaki, and Lanhee Chen, fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. Thank you to all of you for being here on, we continue to say this throughout the morning, it's a very, I think, heavy morning for our entire country. Carol, I want to start with you. One of the things that struck me about the conversations that we've been having throughout the morning is that everyone, all of the guests who we just spoke to, had a very similar message that this has to stop, this can never happen again, and that the country needs to find a way to lower the temperature on our politics.
It was really striking. The one thing that everyone agreed on in your interviews, Republicans and Democrats, that this is a horrific moment in the country's history, and how does the country move forward? And you heard Senator Graham there saying that there needed to be soul searching in the nation. You heard Senator Coons say that this was time to take the tone down in our politics. And I think the question is how long that lasts and whether the country is ready to do that, because this is all playing out against the backdrop of a political campaign in front of a deeply divided country.
I think you're absolutely right. That is the question. And Jen, in fact, we've already seen the finger pointing begin. Some people even blaming President Biden. We heard that very forceful condemnation by President Biden of what happened. As someone who used to work with the president, what are you anticipating in terms of, he's obviously pulled his political ads forward, but as Carol said, the question is, how long does this moment last? And how do you think he sees his role right now?
I mean, I think his role, I'm betting that how he responded was as a human being, which is how we just saw Lindsey Graham at moments during that interview, and Senator Sanders and Senator Coons respond. That's how everybody should be responding. For anyone out there who has a platform, who thinks the moment right now is to be political and attack the other party, you are feeding into the danger. You are making it more likely there's retaliation. I'm incredibly scared. I'm scared for journalists. I'm scared for people who have public platforms of all parties, and that's how people should feel. So for President Biden, I mean, Senator Coons mentioned he was in church. He's somebody who's very prayerful. He is somebody who attends church. I think he probably is relying on that. And in this moment, I think his instinct would be not to be political. And you just take it day by day. That's where he would be. I mean, he has a huge interview tomorrow. And the moment there is not to talk about the political path forward. It is to be a healer and to lower the rhetoric and the tenor in the conversation in the country.
It's just fascinating. Every conversation is going to be different, including that interview, Jen, tomorrow. Lanhee, former President Trump released a statement on his Truth Social account this morning calling on the country to be united. He obviously has a powerful role to play in this moment, too, even as he recovers and as everyone is wishing him a full and quick recovery.
All political leaders have an important role to play. On the night that Abraham Lincoln was shot, he wore a jacket, and inscribed in that jacket was the phrase, "One country, one destiny." And never has that been more true than this morning. We are one country with one destiny. And the notion that we talk about how divided we've been, we have been very divided, and the rhetoric has been hot. But we can go in one of two directions now as a country. We can either double down on that division, increase the rhetoric, increase the heat, make it more challenging for us to have a real discussion, as Senator Sanders said, about the issues. Or we can move in a direction where we come together and decide we actually want to solve some problems. And I think that leaders, whether it's President Biden, former President Trump, certainly everybody you've had on your show today has modeled the right kind of tone we need to take in our politics, a tone of civility and a tone that says, let's come together to address these issues. And I hope that's where we go.
Yeah, Charles, everyone is talking about the Republican National Convention next week in the context of tone. Talk a little, there's so much excitement in your city and obviously now a somber start to what will be this, officially naming Donald Trump as the Republican nominee.
Yeah, I'm saddened as well. I became a political journalist because I became fascinated with conventions and these political campaigns. They're exciting. They're exhilarating. It's a chance for voters to get up front with these candidates. And it's a fascinating process to watch, and I'm hoping it doesn't change all that dramatically. The security will. I've been fascinated by Senator Graham talking about Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt was shot famously in Milwaukee. And I say famously because after being shot, it was just a graze, he just kind of brushed it off, gave that speech, and then went to the hospital afterwards. So what I think now is, when does the former president come into Milwaukee and give the speech to set the tone for not only the convention, but going forward?
Yeah, people will be hanging on his every word, that is for sure. Carol Lee, you've been doing a lot of reporting about the fact that the Biden campaign is wrestling with these calls for President Biden to pass the torch in the wake of his debate performance. How does this moment impact whether or not those talks come to a standstill? Has that already happened?
Well, if that feels like ancient history,
yeah,
right?
It
and
sure
I think
does.
That tells you where this is headed, and that is when you talk to Democrats, they say that this is all paused. I mean, everything. The president's re-election campaign is effectively paused, and the White House is sort of in this hour-by-hour discussion about when does the president come out to speak again? What does his schedule look like this week? Is he going to continue to travel? He had campaign events. And so it just remains to be seen exactly where this goes. But for now, the tone and the tenor is it would be really a tone deaf for a Democrat to come out and say it's time for the president to go.
Jen?
I think that's what I'm also hearing. It feels all paused right now. Well, the thing for all of us to remember is it may not feel paused tomorrow or Tuesday. And part of that is because the convention is starting. And unless the programming changes, the rhetoric and how the programming is set up is not actually calming the tone or restoring civility. We'll see if that programming changes. But if it stays the same, that is escalating it. It is not a civil approach to a convention.
It can be tough to execute a convention program when you have some event that's thrown in like this. In 2012, when I had to help execute the Romney campaign convention program, we had a hurricane. This obviously is far more horrific and creates a whole set of different challenges. But it will be interesting to see how that's navigated over the next several days, because the focus was going to be on immigration and on how to make America safe again and all these other themes. Is that going to continue, or is there going to have to be a dramatic shift in the program because of this, maybe a more unifying tone, one that allows former President Trump to use this week in a really unique way?
We will be watching all of those questions. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.